So welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today it is my honor to have fellow Ottawa citizen Jenny Michell with me. So Chavender's vision is to help more people do more good. She's the founder and president of Chavender, and she works closely with not-for-profit leaders to change the world one mission at a time. Chavender assists organizations and charities across Canada as well as the US to inspire their donors and achieve their fundraising goals through personalized fundraising coaching and training. Before completing her CFRE, Jenny trained as a classical musician and earned her doctorate of musical arts. She brings her creative approach, her drive for excellence, and her passion for people to the world of nonprofits. So welcome, Jenny.
Oh, thank you very much, Jack.
It's so good to have you here and another fundraising consultant actually here in Ottawa. So we didn't have to go very far. But you know, I have some set questions. One of the first questions I tend to ask folks is, tell me about the best canvas you were on and why it made it the best canvas.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you about
Beautiful.
two in a row. Okay. And so I was in a volunteer role, and if you know me, you know I love tennis, and we are recording in the summer, and Wimbledon is on, so I'm like a pig in mud just to set up the stage. And my little tennis club, where I was the chair of the board, mounted a large-scale fundraising campaign where we had no experience at all, Jack, in fundraising. Like, we'd never actually raised a dime through fund development whatsoever, and had no, and matter of fact, worse than that, we had a terrible balance sheet for the last 40 years. And so the goal was to raise $1 million towards the clubhouse. And I'll never forget one afternoon where I was doing outreach on the phone with people. And I know these people, Jack, right? I know them well. I've played tennis. I know all their bugaboos. I know their families. So I make two phone calls. The first phone call is to someone who I play regularly with. And I say, you know, Susan, there are no women donors on this donor list. We need to talk about that because I know she cares about X, Y, and Z, and I know she cares deeply about giving. And she said to me, Jenny, you know, I'm a pensioner. I'm on fixed income. You know, I have lots of things going on, and sorry, you know, can't do it right now. Follow up with me later. And I'm crushed, Jack, because this was my slam dunk. Okay, this was my kickoff one, and I was like, this is the one. And I knew I had the right perspective. I was coming in the right angle. And I remember this feeling of, oh my gosh, I have to get back on the phone like right now. Because if I don't get back on the phone right now, I am pooched. Right. This is it, the end. So I pick up the phone and I phone up one of my longstanding gentlemen. And at that point, my size of my gift had been announced to the community. And that was sort of becoming the weather marker in the community. And so I was saying to him, you know, how are you, you know, Bob, and what's going on? And he said, yeah, no, I've been following along with the campaign. You know, it looks like a good idea. And he said, I said, you know, have you given any perspective to what the number might be, you know, where you'd like to join us? And he said, well, you know, I looked at your gift and I thought, you know, if I take your gift and I divide by the number of years I've been a member of the club, that's like $500 a year. So yeah, I'm in. And then I'm like, did he just say he was matching my gift? Like, what? Like, less than 5 minutes, Jack, into the call. And I said, so, you know, Bob, what you're saying is you'd like to make a gift in the range of $25,000. He's like, yeah. And I can write the check next week. No problem. And delighted to do it. Felt like it was good value. And do you see the contrast between the two? And aren't you glad I picked up the phone again?
So many folks just get, you know, totally paralyzed, right? So once they have some bad news, they don't know what to do, and then, you know, they go into their office and they're like, I'm never doing this again. This is a miserable experience. Wow.
I think what really pushed me forward was that I was with a fundraising committee who were all volunteers, and I thought, this is not the model I want to present to them. I want to share the tough part and the good part. And I think that's what made me pick up the phone, to be honest.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I've always said to staff that's there, you know, sometimes you get into a bad mood, you know, someone will tell you news that you really don't want to hear. But I said, just do a stewardship call. Go in and call a donor
Yeah.
and thank
Yeah.
them for what they've been doing, whether it's volunteering or financial contribution. I said it changes the whole thing because they're always so appreciative of those calls because they're so rare in our world, and that just changes the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? So I've always kind of said, if you're in a crappy mood, just go call
Yeah.
a donor. You're going to get into a much better mood.
Yeah. And I like the idea of you don't know where it's going to go, Jack, but you know it
Yeah.
moves a dial. We can't control the outcome, but you control the action. We can't control if the donor is going to say yes or no or
Right.
wants more information, but we can control the action. I have a colleague that talks about all everything I learned from
Right.
fundraising. I learned from McDonald's, which is
Yes.
all process, right? You can't control how many people are going to buy are going to purchase or McDonald's, but you can set up all the steps along the way. Those are in your control. And for those of us
Yes.
control freaks in the room, anybody, we can say, look at all those check boxes for my week. Look at what I accomplished, which wasn't I closed gifts,
Right.
but I did
Right.
outreach.
Right. And it's interesting because I've seen some positives and negative sides when they talk about the McDonaldization of things, right? So sometimes just throwing everyone into the exact same process doesn't work, right?
True.
Especially when you're
True.
dealing with your top leadership giving. It needs to be much more
Yeah.
bespoke, but there has to be some sort of a process, even if it's realizing that I have to do something different for this guy. Well, that's a process in and of itself. So it's always kind of interesting that's there.
Yeah. I think for me, I think that the McDonald'sization is
Hmm.
for myself. It's not for the donor. Just to clarify,
Right.
it's my processes and like, when I put my head on the pillow Friday night, have I done enough to trust that in 6 months, a year, 18 months, and by the way, those are the important timelines, not tomorrow, the next day, that I will have confidence in those things, and that's on me. And so I think a lot about, I remember the first time I realized it's not about how many proposals you write, it's about your
Yes.
successfulness rate, right? And how you can change that rate rather than the number. Remember when you first started, Jack? They'd say, "Can you put 12 proposals out a month?" I'm like, "Yeah, but like,
Right.
why?" if right, why would you spend? I do not have
Right.
that kind of
Right.
time
And
anymore.
they don't even say qualified prospects, right? So you're just kind of throwing stuff up against a wall,
No.
and you figure if you throw 100 things up against the wall, something's going to stick. And it doesn't really work that way anymore. It may have in the past. I,
Yeah. Maybe.
I certainly wouldn't respond well to it, but whatever. So
Yeah.
tell me something that you've learned from a donor.
I remember talking to another one of my so I sat in front of a husband and wife, um, and I was trying to decide in this case whether I believe in feasibility studies. Whether you call them feasibility
Right.
studies, I don't really care what you call them, and I don't even really care
Hmm.
if they're defined. But I believe in the idea of
Yeah.
seeking feedback before you go out. So I was in that mode with a donor, and I'm also, just for your listeners, you'd be amazed
Yeah.
what people share with you if you come with an open mind. It's pretty incredible. And I mean, like, stuff that is very often can be
Hmm.
very personal, very intimate. About money, we're going to talk about money, about where the rifts or when the riff is happening and when it's not happening, and how many kids need support and all that stuff. And all you have to do is just sit there and be nice
Hmm.
and quiet, right? But this was one where it was interesting. I had a husband and wife, very different opinions about
Hmm.
the project, Jack. And I think the thing I learned was just because they're a couple doesn't mean they make
Right.
decisions together. And they even gave separately, and they both in the end gave to the project, but at completely different levels. Because for one of them, the project
Right.
really didn't mean
Hmm.
anything to her. It was almost not quite vanity, but close. And to the other, there was a sense of
Right.
behoovenness for the project. And another interesting thing that he said was, which I have never forgotten. Actually, he was a business owner. He had a trust fund, or he had a business entity, and his comment to me was, I don't really care, charitable gift, give business gift, like, it's kind of
Right.
a bit of a wash for me. I mean, I'd have to look at the accounting. And I think I learned in that, Jack, that don't make assumptions about how valuable a charitable tax receipt is, because that's maybe the assumption
Right.
I had going in, and he set me
Yeah.
straight on
Yeah.
that.
It's interesting that the couples, give separately. When I worked for the Jewish Federation, they have a specific women's division, right, and a whole women's program. Because what used to happen was the man would make the decision, the man would die young or younger than the woman, and then they'd look to the
Yeah.
woman to say, okay, can you keep up the gift? And she'd have no clue what the gift was. So they said, okay, this is bad. So, they kind of had a whole women's division, but I think the
Wow.
pendulum has almost swung the other way. I know my wife and I decide as kind of like a household, where are we giving our charitable
Yeah.
dollars to? And we decide it together. And each of us, brings money into the communal pot, but we make a gift as a household.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of assumptions, right? And asking those open-ended questions about, and can I assume this would be a gift
Yeah.
from your family, or would this be a gift from your foundation, or do you guys typically do your gifts together? Like that just takes, what was
Right.
that, 20
Yeah.
seconds? Less than, Jack? But
Yeah.
clarity,
Yeah.
clarity,
Yeah. And I
right?
think that it certainly helps. And I think that one of the best parts of those feasibility studies or planning action studies, whatever you want to call them, is you take all that data and you throw it into that database so it's there, right? So that that information isn't lost.
Totally.
Some of the stuff is confidential and it's under that kind of dome that we always say as the
Yeah,
consultants that you can tell us anything and we aren't necessarily going to attribute it back to you, but something such as how do you give as a family unit, that certainly could be put down. I don't think that's a secret. As a matter of fact, there's a well-known
yeah,
philanthropist in
great point.
town. It's traditionally his money, but it's the husband and wife that give together. And he says that on any piece of correspondence, if his name is first, he stops reading it. Her name has to go first, even though it's traditionally his money.
Love that.
But that's what he does. So
Hmm.
good organizations have kind of written that down in there, and he says he stops reading if his name is first. So
Well, good for him for having
yeah,
principles too. I love that.
yeah.
I love that
So
story.
well, Jenny, this has been an unbelievable chat. I'm so glad that we had this. We kind of spoke about everything to do with fundraising and solved all the world's
Everything.
problems all at once, right? So it was great. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they do that?
You bet. So you can find me at jenny@chavender.com. That's Chavender like lavender, but with a CH at the beginning. You can also listen to my podcast, Underdog Leadership Podcast, on all of your favorite platforms. And I love hearing from people. And Jack, it's a real pleasure to be here and to have my own soapbox to kind of, have this dialogue with you.
Yeah.
I usually play your role. And so it's been kind of fun to be a little unleashed here and would love to hear from folks. So thank
Well,
you for
thank
that
you, Jenny.
opportunity, Jack.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.